Hey, Warrior Saints, good morning. Welcome to Thursday's episode of our Crucifixional live stream. Glad to have you beautiful people with us. We're talking about rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. And the story that we're talking about comes to us in the Bible from the book of Nehemiah, where the city of Jerusalem had been destroyed and the walls torn down and the city gates burned by the Babylonian conquerors, who then took all of God's people into slavery in exile in Babylon. Nehemiah was conscripted by the Persian king Cyrus to go back and rebuild the city and rebuild the walls and get really to rebuild the temple, I should be saying all the way through this week, the temple of God. And as Nehemiah goes back, he sees that the city's in shambles, it's in ruins. And he goes to prepare to rebuild the walls and the temple of God in the city. We've been saying all the way through that really Jerusalem in the story of Nehemiah it's talking about the actual city, but it's also talking about you and I, the man. We are Jerusalem, where we have been, the walls of our lives have been crumbled down, if you will, by the disobedience of the commandments of God. So bring it back now to context, Nehemiah goes out in chapter 2 to inspect the walls. Like you could imagine, if you've got this building project in front of you, that you'd want to go at least look and see what the rubble looks like that you got to deal with. And as Nehemiah goes out there, he sees it, and he calls upon the other men of his people to say, let's rebuild. Let's fix this so that we're no longer mocked. Let's show the power, the might, the power of our God by the walls, the powerful walls, the protective walls, and the wise gates that we rebuild. How that in these things is life. Let's rebuild it. And the guys around him are like, yeah, we're on board. But then something funny happens. As he's trying to have, I don't want to be cheesy, but like a revival of his faith, of his connection to God, to restore his temple, to give God a home to be worshiped in. And all of the people are excited, recognizing, yeah, we need that protective wall. We need that wisdom in the gates. Let's go back to do things the right way, not the chaos of the destruction. And they get excited about it. They then face opposition, right? And we hear the following from chapter 2. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they jeered at us and despised us and said, what is this thing you are doing? Are you rebelling against the king? Now in the story, they were unhappy because Nehemiah and his people wouldn't let them join in the building. They wanted to make some money on the side on the project, and Nehemiah said, I ain't having it. So rather than respect them and recognize, hey, they're fighting for what they believe in, these three guys, Tobiah, Sanballat, and Geshem, they attack them, right? And try to tear them down. Well, you're going against what the king says, right? You're going against the boss. Like, how can you do this, right? Now, Nehemiah is not going to play this game with them. He says to them, I'm going to read this verse. I didn't type it in, sorry, I didn't get it to Greg, but verse 20, then I replied to them, the God of heaven will make us prosper, and we, his servants, will arise and build. But you have no portion or right to claim in Jerusalem, right? Like, it's like, pipe down, quit your whining. We got this, because God will make us prosper. Now, if you take this story and this imagery in Nehemiah of rebuilding the city and apply it to our lives, and we think about the world in which we live, the world, the culture, the society that we have known is really under assault, right? Like, I mean, it's things that are normal are not normal anymore, right? And things that were taboo have now become the norm. Like, I mean, I don't want to get too far off into it, but like this whole, sexual gender identity thing. Like, we know, everybody knows, everyone on the planet knows that there's a male and female. We all know that. It's just non-negotiable. But we've gotten so far off of that now there's like 70 plus genders and they don't even make any sense. Even the people who spout them and claim them know that they don't make any sense. The problem with that all is that it has now become acceptable. And if you say something about that, if you question that and say, well, you're either a male because you have this plumbing or you're a female because you have that plumbing, you are then attacked. What, are you going against the king? Sanballat. Right? Like, in other words, do you hear what they're saying? He's telling you, like what Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem said was like they wanted to force the Israelites back into the box, not to rebuild what they were after, because they couldn't be a part of it. So they threatened them with the king. What do you think happens to us today where people say things that they call you names, an ist, right? Of some sort, a chauvinist or a racist or a homophobicist or whatever the ists are, all the isms and ists, right? Like we're boxed in because you go against the king, right? Are you going against the king? What's the king? The narrative of the mainstream media and the nine, we call them, but the chaotic oligarchs, whatever you want to say, who try to keep all of us boxed in, right? We're going against that narrative. That's the new metaphor, the king, that's the new king, right? And so they threaten, like, you're one of those things if you want to rebuild truth and wisdom and protection, right? So the challenge is, and we know it, here's the thing, as men, as warrior saints, we feel it. 99.9% of all human beings in the world feel it. We know inside of us inherently that chaos is exactly that, chaos. And we don't know how to get through it, right? Because let's be honest, sometimes it's scary for some people. Like when people call you names or want to confront you or hold you down by these, politically correct ideas, it's kind of scary to stand up to them, right? Like I understand that. I face that all the time. I can understand how uncomfortable for some that may be. And so as we know we have to fight it, and yet we're uncomfortable to fight it, to help rebuild the truth of society, we may find ourselves needing a little help and a little guidance. And that's exactly what the way of the warrior saint is for. It is exactly that thing that we do, is to help rebuild the walls of you and I, our lives, so that we can go out and rebuild the walls of the world. Do you understand? I'm being literal, but also metaphorical, and more importantly, warrior saint-like, right? The idea is that let's get ourselves in order so we can get the world in order. To do that, all you have to do is join us. We're in the fight. I mean, you're watching us, so we're in the fight. Join us by visiting warriorsaints.org. Get involved, become a builder with us, a fellow creator, and let's make the world more and more on the return to God, like Nehemiah and his people, that just as God restored them, so too he might rebuild the walls of our lives. Join us, warriorsaints.com. .org. Anyways, we love you. We're going to be back tomorrow to finish up strong on Friday. Until then, as always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.